Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I have read some really interesting books. I'm excited to talk about them, but first, a quick knitting update. I am not going to show you my knitting today, but I finished the sweater and I'm really excited about it. I think it might be actually the first sweater I have ever knit for myself that I want to wear, but it is being blocked. And if you do not know what blocking is, it's where you soak it in water and then you line it up and make sure it's the right shape. And so it's drying. It is taking a while. So next video, I'm gonna try to wear the sweater because I'm really excited about it. So I'm taking a 1-week break from knitting to let my fingers recover because I went a little crazy at the end of the project, putting in way too many hours and kind of killing my fingers. So then I will start on my next project, which I think is going to be a bit of a shawl with the leftover yarn that I have had from my last few projects. So that is what I am doing knitting wise, but I will post here a picture of the apron and handkerchief that I made last week because this is the traditional costume of the castañeras. This week in Catalonia, we celebrate the castañada, where they cook chestnuts and everyone has chestnuts, and my daughters are doing some fun traditional dances, and the youngest gets to dress up as a person who cooks castañas, the chestnuts, and it's so fun. It's my favorite fall-time tradition. I haven't quite gotten into liking cooked chestnuts, but at this time of year, they do have some amazing panayets, and I'll put a picture here of panayets because they're just so delicious. Those are my favorite cozy fall time things here. Yes, people do celebrate Halloween here, but it's a bit of a newer thing that has been coming to this part of Spain, and so those traditions aren't quite as widespread as the castañada, and I am really excited about that this week. So that's a little bit about what's going on with me. Let's jump into the books that I have read this last week. I wanted something kind of light and fun, and I decided to read I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. And this is following a woman who's kind of trapped in her life. She works this dead-end office job, and she doesn't really have a good support system or friends. And when an IT mix-up grants her permission to all of her colleagues' emails, she decides to take advantage of it to try to find out what her coworkers really think of her and to survive the next round of layoffs. And this book was fine, but it gave me unending anxiety. This was not a pleasant reading experience for me. It's supposed to be a humorous, rom-com fun book, and instead I was just stressed out about the ethical conundrums that this presented, as well as just worrying that she was going to get caught and wishing that she would just communicate with people, and it was hard to read. So I think that if that doesn't bother you, you might find this to be fun and enjoyable, but just the idea of her having the access to all these emails and not telling anyone and reading everyone's emails, just, ooh, it was like someone was grabbing my insides and squeezing them the entire time that I was reading this book, which was not my favorite reading experience. If you don't feel that kind of anxiety when you're reading books, I think you might enjoy it because it did have a cute and somewhat believable romance. We had some cute, funny interactions, but just that overwhelming stress was not fun to get through. Tiffany at Towering TBR recommended the book Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body. This book is some essays by a disability advocate who herself is in a wheelchair. It talks about her experiences. It talks about disability advocacy and how we see disability in the world. And you can tell that she has done a lot of research into this, and not only is it her own experiences, but she has tried to understand the topic in a greater way. And honestly, this was a 5-star book for me. I do think that if you have spent a lot of time researching disability advocacy, you may find the ideas presented a little basic, but I do think that it is so important to engage with these ideas. What makes someone disabled? Is it something wrong with them, or is it a world that is not allowing them to move through the world with ease? It was just a really fantastic book. I think that even if you are not disabled, you may find some very relatable ideas about here, where you have tied your worth to how productive you are and trying to disengage from that. I just thought it was really heartfelt, really timely for me. I really needed to engage with some of these ideas, and just really engaging and well written. And so I really did like this book. Thank you, Tiffany. I think this was a really great book, especially if you just want to start understanding some of the issues that are affecting disability. Now, I listened to the book, A Walk in the Park, The True Story of a Spectacular Misadventure in the Grand Canyon by Kevin Fedarko. And this book was also really excellent. This is following Fedarko and his journey on a through hike through the entire Grand Canyon. And this was a very long journey, and he and his friend, who is a photographer, were not prepared to go into this. And so this book has some really gorgeous writing. You feel transported to the Grand Canyon, and it goes into some of the different politics surrounding the canyon, preservation, history, cultural significance, as well as profiting and making money. And I think it did a really great job at going through all of this. I really adored this. I have a special place in my heart for the Grand Canyon. I have hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon 3 times, and that was such a wonderful experience. But I have, of course, not done this many months through hike that the author went on. And what was frustrating as you get into this book is just how stupid the author and his friend were, thinking, oh, we can just get in shape on the hike. The hike will get us into shape, and going so not prepared. I have only done, 3-day backpacking trips at the most. But even I know not to do what they were doing with the equipment they were packing, the extra things they were carrying, the weight that they had. Just how unprepared they were for the journey they were going to take. I thought, wow, you really should have done some shorter backpacking trips first to prepare. You should have tried this out. You should have been walking around with your pack. You should have been doing all of this before setting out on your trip. And the author was really great at saying, hey, we were stupid. This was wrong. We shouldn't have done this. But does it feel kind of frustrating to see how stupid they were at the beginning of the book? Yeah. So that was the only thing that kind of put me off a little bit, but overall, this ended up being a 5-star book. I loved it. I just loved talking about the Grand Canyon. I loved looking at all the different things. I thought the author did a great job and wrote so beautifully. But audiobook-wise, the author narrates the audiobook, and he does a great job. I did not have a problem with his narration other than the voices he uses for the other people in the book. I just think that he definitely tried to put on a voice for the different people that showed up in the book, and mostly I didn't notice. But his friend Peter, I just feel like if I was Peter and I went and listened to this audiobook and heard how Kevin said my lines, I would be a little bit offended. Because when you have a sibling and they say something and you repeat it back to make them sound stupid? So that voice, it's, hey, don't do that, I don't like it. Hey, don't do that, I don't like that. That was really the voice, at least how I interpreted it, that he used for his friend Peter. And maybe that is just how Peter talks, but I do think in the audiobook, the author did not give a flattering voice to his friend. But that is my little gripe. Overall, an excellent book. I forgot to mention that that last book was a recommendation from the amazing Audrey at Audrey Approved. I also have the author's other book, The Emerald Mile, on hold at the library, so eventually I will get to that because I'm very excited for that one. But thank you, Audrey, for the recommendation. Now, Sue Jackson recommended the book Burn by Peter Heller. This book drops you in the middle of some sort of apocalypse. So we have two men who have gone out hunting, and when they return from their hunting trip, all the houses are burned to the ground. Everyone's dead, all the people are gone, and they have no idea what happened. They don't know how they are going to get back to their family. They don't know what has gone on. It is them trying to get out of Maine, where they were hunting, and along their journey, they do find a young girl, and they also want to get her to safety. This book does a really great job of giving you that nature writing, that sense of place. You really feel like you are out in the woods with our two main characters, which is really great. And the plot keeps you needing to know what happens, so you can't put it down. It's very compelling. But then I don't know if I really loved how things turned out in the end, and I don't know if I really connected to the main character as well as I would like. So the book kind of ends up being a little bit of a meh for me. There were some really good things about it, but I honestly think that out of the two men, the other one should have been the main character because I related to him trying to get back to his wife and daughters much more than this man who was questioning, what is there even for me to go back to? My life is all horrible. I just don't know if I connected as much to that. And I went back and looked, and I have read 3 Peter Heller books now. I have read The River, The Last Stranger, and Burn. And you know what? I gave all 3 of these 3 stars. I just don't know if he's quite the author for me. I need to be a little more wary going into his books because I do think he has something really beautiful about that writing, that rugged outdoor space that he creates through words. I think that goes really well and I appreciate it, but I also just don't know if his characters are as compelling as I would like, or if his plots really resolve in a way that makes me feel satisfied with the endings. But as apocalypse kind of books go, I really liked the premise because I often see the dystopian, what happens after this horrible event and how are we going to create societies, but there was something about that interesting space of the complete confusion of what is happening, how is this happening, what do we do from here? And I really enjoyed that. So that is what I have read the last week. I hope you are all having a wonderful fall time and you have a lovely Halloween, and I will see you all on the next one.